We are Rogue Media Sports.
It is the Cam Show. It's Rogue Media Sports Network. Zach Burke, Cam Stewart, some big-time guests lined up today to tackle all the biggest stories in somewhere around Boston sports. First, I want to talk about quarterback for the Patriots. And I know what all of you were thinking. He's going to talk about Drake Maye. Yes and no. I'll tell you who should have been the starting quarterback for the Patriots this year. Plus, Pete Rose died. I think you saw that, Zach. Pete Rose died.
Yeah, it did.
Talk a little Pete Rose later on in the show and his ties to Boston. A pretty big one, actually. And then we'll have Pete Souza, who is coming back from an unbelievable event in Atlanta. He is coming straight here to the Rogue Studios, to the Colt Brennan Memorial Studio at the Alico building right here in downtown Waco. Can't wait to go over that with him. But a very special guest for that Pete Rose segment. Just putting it out there. He's a guy who watches a lot of Patriots. In fact, he's someone I text a lot during the Patriots games. And between us, I think we've missed like one Patriots game in the last 20 years or so. So speaking of those New England Patriots, it has been the story all year. People are like, dude, I can't stand this Jacoby Brissett thing. When is Drake Maye going to start? You can open that box if you need to, Zach. You can open that box. I think you're worried it's going to make some noise. I think you're okay.
No, I'm doing my own thing. Like, I got it. We're good.
Okay.
Am I distracting you by doing
No. I'm like, you can, though. You can do it.
Oh, no. Okay. But go ahead.
It doesn't matter to me.
I'm just listening and enjoying. Okay. Now, Jacoby Brissett, where were you?
That was not a passive-aggressive thing. It's like, literally, you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, Jacoby Brissett's the problem.
Yes, that's fine, though. You can make some noise. Jacoby Brissett's tough to watch, Zach. That's what I'm getting to. It's tough to watch. We kind of knew it was coming. I think a lot of us knew that they weren't going to make Drake Maye the week one starter and that it was going to take a while for him to get in there. And that's exactly what we're going through. Patience is a virtue. I'm one of those people who I think I'm ready to, like, one more week. That game against Miami. Watched Miami play on primetime yesterday. Woof. It's just as bad as you might think for a team with no quarterback. I mean, how can you even really hold it against them? But I think the Patriots see it as, hey, we'll get through Jacoby Brissett one more game, and we will then kind of assess whether we need to go with Drake Maye. Because I think 2 weeks after that is when they go to London and they face Jacksonville. Like, that's a winnable game. That is absolutely a winnable game. So then you start to see, okay, maybe those winnable games start to stack up. I know by the end of the month, they've got Tennessee, they've got someone else in there that's not very good. So maybe by that time, Drake Maye's hit his stride a little bit. But I'm now questioning why Jacoby Brissett was ever the starting quarterback for the Patriots in 2024. Because, look, I commended him last week. He hadn't turned the ball over before that game against San Francisco. He did it twice against the 49ers, and he didn't make bad plays worse, which I'm like, look, that's a good thing for this team right now, that you can have a veteran guy that can go out and just kind of put the hands at 10-2, isn't ever going to light it up, probably not going to win you many games, but the team's not going to win many games anyway, and let's roll with that until the kid is ready. But the more I look back on that, the more I think, you know what? That's not a good enough reason for me. Because the Patriots knew at pick number 3, it was either going to be Jaden Daniels or Drake Maye. From what we know, there was no push to move into that 2 slot for Jaden Daniels, who has been lighting it up so far in Washington. And that Drake Maye was the guy that they had circled. And you also knew coming into the draft, he was going to be the biggest project out of the 3. So if you were going to pick Drake Maye, you were going to need a veteran probably to start the season, but at the very worst to be the backup to a young, highly talented rookie quarterback in Drake Maye. And they decided to go with Jacoby Brissett. The Alex Van Pelt thing. they had worked together in Cleveland. But the more I look back at that, I'm like, why Jacoby Brissett? There were so many quarterbacks out there, free agents, ones on the trading block. How does Pittsburgh end up with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and the Patriots, who are desperate for a veteran quarterback, goes with Jacoby Brissett? How does that make any sense? Justin Fields, they traded him for a 6th-round pick. Couldn't have thrown a 6th-round pick to go and get a guy who's a capable starting quarterback in the NFL like Jacoby Brissett, but with much more upside? Because you used a 6th-round pick on a quarterback in the draft. Joe Milton took a flyer on him, a dual-threat quarterback that you hope can bring shake up your offense a little bit in the NFL. How about Justin Fields, a guy who started for 3 years, who is also, I don't know if you've heard, a dual-threat quarterback who can bring you a veteran presence and some potentially big upside? Because there's still people out there, myself included, who think Justin Fields could be a damn good starting quarterback in this league and with the right situation and the right personnel. And his Steelers are 3-1 right now. And it's like, why don't you bring in a guy like that? And if he wins, it's great. And if he somehow falls short at one point, then you've got Drake Maye and you love him. You can go and trade the kid, Justin Fields. That's like exactly what the Mahomes situation was. Alex Smith was a good quarterback. I mean, obviously more of a resume than Justin Fields, but you had a guy who already was your starting quarterback, veteran guy, could get you where you needed to go. And then by the time Mahomes was ready, he's a guy who's pretty expendable, Alex Smith. And they didn't really miss him after that. And of course, Mahomes turns out to be one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But like, that is the situation to me. Why aren't you going for Justin Fields? Or why aren't you going for Russell Wilson, a guy who has a Hall of Fame case? I know the last few years in Denver were not great, but last year, Jacoby Brissett started 3 games. 3 games for Washington. 3 touchdowns, 224 yards in 3 games. It's like, yeah, the Russell Wilson years, they were a bit lean in Denver, but they were much better than that. You know, in fact, last year was a renaissance for a big part of the year. He finishes in, I think, only 14 games started, 26 touchdowns and 8 picks. 15 games, sorry. 26 touchdowns and 8 picks. Over 3,000 yards. Is that the Russell Wilson that was challenging for MVP awards a few years ago? No. But that's a hell of a lot better than Jacoby Brissett. And Russell Wilson signed a league minimum, a vet min deal with Pittsburgh at 1.2. So I get that either one of those guys would probably like to go to Pittsburgh over New England, but once you get 2 of those guys in, one of them's not going to be the starter. You come to New England, there's almost no real pushback on if you're going to be the starter or not. Because we love Drake Maye, but we all know he's a project. So what is it why are the Patriots going after Jacoby Brissett instead of either of these 2 guys? I don't understand that. Is it just the Cleveland powwow that we've got going on now with Elliott Wolf and Alex Van Pelt? I guess. But why then couldn't they get the other guy that was in Cleveland with Alex Van Pelt last year? Because Joe Flacco just came in and won a game again for an NFL team. Joe Flacco just walks up there with the Colts after Anthony Richardson gets hurt, and he throws 2 touchdowns, and they win the game. They beat that Pittsburgh team we were just talking about. Remember how great a story Joe Flacco was last year? 5 games, 13 touchdowns, 8 picks. Comeback player of the year for Cleveland last year. But no, let's pick the guy who was with Alex Van Pelt the year before, who was wasting away in Washington, who's playing behind Sam Howell because he's a pro too. You can tell me Joe Flacco's not a pro's pro. He's won a Super Bowl. Russell Wilson, oh yeah, checks notes. He's won a Super Bowl. Well, let's go with Jacoby Brissett instead. If you don't think the Patriots could have gotten one of those 2, maybe even one of those 3 guys, you're bullshitting yourself. Come on. 2 of them went to the same team. And here are the Patriots, desperate for a veteran starting quarterback who can get the car in the garage for half the season, and they're going with Jacoby Brissett. instead of a vet min deal for Russell Wilson? It's just not adding up to me. And this is where I think, like, all these guys are in their first year, right? Elliott Wolf and Jerod Mayo, and still they're making dumb decisions. And I thought it was funny that they mentioned on the broadcast that Jerod Mayo had talked to the broadcasters about wanting to bring in new, different voices, kind of hinting at the fact that that wasn't really a thing under Belichick. It brought a lot of guys back in different roles. That's how you get Matt Patricia being the offensive coordinator. So Jerod Mayo wants to bring in some different voices. And clearly that's a part of his pitch to Robert Kraft. And again, I still don't get. Robert Kraft has to hear this pitch and think, yeah, that's the guy I'm going to go with. This guy who wants to hear different voices. The guy who has no contacts around the league because he has only coached in this organization. For this coach, the one who we just said brings in a bunch of the same guys all the time. I'll trust him to make some phone calls and bring some guys in. Like, does any of that make sense? Nothing the Patriots are doing makes sense. Maybe the Drake Maye thing will make some sense, but the fact that they wanted to bring in some new voices, so they promoted Jerod Mayo to head coach, and now you've got a GM who brings in his offensive play caller and Alex Van Pelt, and they only want to work with like the worst quarterback that they worked with in Cleveland for some reason. Like, what from last season detracted you from the fact that Joe Flacco could be a starter in the NFL this year? I get it. He's 39 years old. But he just proved to you last year he can still play in the league. You're not asking for a full 17 games. You're asking for 6 or 7, which is what you're asking from Jacoby Brissett. But Joe Flacco is better than Jacoby Brissett. He proved that last year. Russell Wilson is better than Jacoby Brissett. Justin Fields, of course, he's better than Jacoby Brissett. That, to me, that's no excuse. If you want to look at how bad the offensive line is, I get that. That's a failure over years and years. And there's not much you can do in free agency to go out and get a top-tier tackle. It's not going to happen. You hope that your guys have an eye for talent and that you have the right offensive line coach to make that work. So far, 0 for 2. But the quarterback thing, you can't tell me there weren't better quarterbacking options than Jacoby Brissett out there for very cheap. Vet min deals. I didn't even look up Flacco's contract, but you think he's playing for more than the veterans minimum right now? Russell Wilson's playing for the veterans minimum, and you gave up a 6th-round pick if you're Pittsburgh to go and get Justin Fields, a guy who was picked ahead of Mac Jones. Give me a break. That's another not week-to-week Patriots failure, but another long-term Patriots failure. And of course, their hope is that it's going to be washed out. Who will remember? Because Drake Maye is going to come in a couple weeks. He's going to steal the show. He's going to be the franchise quarterback. But when I talk about what I talked about yesterday, that they are likely the only team other than maybe Tennessee, maybe now with Miami, Miami put an asterisk next to it, that just cannot expect a big-time game from their quarterback. Can't do it. You're just hurting yourself if you expect the Patriots to have a 300-yard passing game this year or to put up 30 points in a game. It's never going to happen. If you had Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or Joe Flacco, that would happen. You had that chance. Instead, you went with a guy that gives you no chance. No chance at that. Jacoby Brissett has been around a long time. Impressive career to tell your grandkids about, but he's never been that quarterback. Never. And there were 2 Super Bowl champion quarterbacks out there available at the veterans minimum, and you went and got Jacoby Brissett instead. For what reason? No idea. There's no number that you can point me to. You can't even point to his age that's going to tell me, yeah, Jacoby Brissett was a better option than Russell Wilson or Joe Flacco. A lot of negative buzz around Russell Wilson because he got released. But again, the numbers, not terrible last year. And much better than you're getting from your quarterback right now. And if you want to say, okay, yeah, Russell Wilson, too much negativity there. You didn't want to bring that in. Okay, fine. Too much negativity around Joe Flacco? Comeback player of the year. Got them to the playoffs. In fact, the best stat to Alex Van Pelt's name is that he got a team to the playoffs last year using 4 different starting quarterbacks. And they ignored all of them. They wanted to go get the guy from Washington that was there with him the year before. The one the Patriots beat up on the year before in 2022. I'm no math nerd. Trust me. Our next guest in the next segment will be able to confirm that, but this isn't adding up to me. So yeah, it sucks that it sucks for Patriots fans that it's Jacoby Brissett out there and not Drake Maye, but it's bullshit for Patriots fans that it's Jacoby Brissett out there and not Russell Wilson or Joe Flacco or Justin Fields or even Sam Darnold or Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton just threw for 300 yards. Like, there's so many better options out there. It's making me think of like the Jerry Jones quote about Derrick Henry. Yeah, we couldn't afford him, and how pissed off that made Cowboys fans. Like that is it. The Patriots are too bad, I guess, to realize. But why aren't people saying stuff like that? Like they and again, not that they were going to be like a 10-win team if they brought one of these guys in, but you had so much better options for free agent and trading block quarterbacks than Jacoby Brissett. So much better. Who are getting paid nothing. And it's this year of the career renaissance for quarterbacks around football. You know, with Sam Darnold, with Gardner Minshew for a couple of weeks, for Baker Mayfield, for all these guys. And the Patriots are just left sitting on their hands because Jacoby Brissett is the only retread Jag quarterback in the league that is not having a renaissance. He's the only one. The only one. I guess Russell Wilson's not because he hasn't started. Could he be looking for a team? If there becomes a situation where, God forbid, I really hope this doesn't happen, but like Drake Maye gets hurt. You know, he starts a couple games, he gets hurt. You have to go out and get one of those guys at the trade deadline, right? Like Russell Wilson because it's Justin Fields' team, or Joe Flacco because Anthony Richardson's back from whatever the injury is. Like, there's just no excuse that you had those options out there and you rolled with Jacoby Brissett. Especially when I look at the fact that they had a winnable game against Seattle, who's a good team in this league. You have a winnable game next week against Miami. You'll have winnable games against Jacksonville and Tennessee, maybe Chicago in November. Winnable games that if Jacoby Brissett is still playing, as we have seen, they're not winnable. And there were guys out there who could win some games for you. You don't need the number 1 pick to go get a tackle. Okay? Top 5 would be perfect, and that's where this team's going to end up. So why not win some games and have this guy learn under a borderline Hall of Famer and someone like Russell Wilson, a guy who has won a Super Bowl or a Super Bowl MVP like Joe Flacco? Nope, let's have him learn under Jacoby Brissett. He's a professional, which of course he is, but come on, guys. There were so many better options out there. And I don't know why it took me this long to get really pissed off about that, because I was kind of like, Jacoby Brissett, whatever. Like, you know what they're going for. They're going for some Jag quarterback. But when you look at who was out there, that sucks for the Patriots. That really sucks. What sucks for some people, a lot of people, is that Pete Rose died yesterday. Eduardo Perez, kind of heartbreakingly, bringing that news live on ESPN. We are going to talk to a very special guest next who got to see a lot of Pete Rose play, even though, you know, they didn't play interleague baseball back then. But he did get to see him play, Pete Rose play against his beloved Red Sox. My dad, Bill Stewart, hopefully, if he can figure out the technology here, is next on The Camp Show. back here on the Cam Show. Zach,
Yeah,
sometimes the best teases are the ones that never come to fruition.
that's true.
Never. The bulldozer, previous commitment, got moved up. So as I texted him in the break there, found out he's not going to be able to join us. It looks like. I kind of sprung it on him short notice, so
Well,
I'm gonna give my dad a mulligan.
Do we
there.
not? Okay, yeah.
And
mean,
I might want to have him on to talk about this. It's not like exactly his wheelhouse. Like if we wanted to talk old Red Sox or something, like we could go for hours and hours. But what I find is a very interesting vantage point is that my dad was a senior in high school during the 75 World Series, Red Sox Reds.
Mhm.
And it's one of the great World Series of all time. And like he's like kind of right in the thick of that. And he was a baseball like maniac, complete maniac following baseball in the 60s and 70s. And so he saw like all of Pete Rose's career, even though it was tougher to watch back then. But I think that's interesting. Like the peak of Pete Rose's career, the peak of the Big Red Machine, one of the great teams ever, taking on, this great Red Sox team that is trying to finally reverse the curse. Didn't obviously do it. And my dad's 18, 17, 18, 17.
18, 17?
17.
Okay.
In the middle of this.
Yeah.
And that series kind of takes on a life of its own. Game 6 is an absolute classic. There's a bunch of rainouts. I think it was before Game 6. And so like in fact, this was from a Pete Rose quote from an old documentary, he was like, there were so many rainouts. So all of a sudden it became like a Super Bowl feel because like there was this anticipation and this build up day after day. And like everybody knew what the situation was. Everyone knew the characters involved. And so I think that's really interesting. And my dad's also an old school guy. So he's not a gambler. So he's not going to pull any punches as to whether he's like, I wanted to be like, do you feel bad for Pete Rose? Because I think that's a really divisive question. Let me just ask you, Zach, do you feel bad for Pete Rose never getting into the Hall of Fame and now not being able to see it?
Yes, I do. I thought about this, funny enough, on the way home after I found out about it. Was the first thought to me was like, oh, they're going to find a way to induct him posthumously now. Like I can just see like that's something that baseball will do. So aside from that, yeah, part of me does, just because it's so weird to me that to be able to separate things, like you have the player on the field and you have the things he did off the field. I know that doesn't work for everybody and everybody can't hold those two standards separately. I get that. But like, I look like a guy like Michael Jordan, phenomenal player, but an absolute asshole off the court.
Oh yeah.
But like,
and had some issues
exactly.
too. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, even the greats, like I've always had a thought that a lot of them kind of had that attitude, but still it's something you have to separate. And I think as a player, Pete Rose deserved to see himself be inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's different to me, whereas like it's betting. It's not him taking performance enhancing drugs, trying to find a one up on the competition or anything like that. It's a little bit different than the steroid problems of like the 90s and 2000s or however long it went on, for all we know. So yeah, I am a little bit sad that Pete Rose isn't going to be able to see himself be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
And I get that. Pete Rose, obviously super polarizing figure. And I also understand the irony of how much MLB and sports in general are now way into sports gambling and their partnerships, with FanDuel and Underdog and all this stuff. And it's like everywhere. Like FanDuel's a huge, I think it's FanDuel, is a huge partner with MLB.
Yeah, them and it used to be DraftKings too, because I remember seeing like
FanDuel definitely is with the NFL.
Yeah, but I mean, like you can go to a Rangers game and it's going to show up as the ads behind home plate at some point in time.
It's everywhere, man. So I get that. I do get that. But by the same token, it's like this guy was a manager of a baseball team and was betting on baseball. And I know he says he never bet on Cincinnati Reds games, but like, we don't know that. We don't know that. It was all underground back then anyway. We have no idea whether he actually bet on a Reds game, or I think he said, I only bet on my team to win. And like, that's just, he's in a position of too much control there. To me, it's like the Tim Donaghy thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's the manager of the team.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And he can, even if he's betting on his team to win, he can, burn out a pitcher who's pitched 3 days in a row just to secure a win and potentially hurt him and hurt his career earnings. Like it really takes away from the integrity of the game. I was talking about this with Grace yesterday to try and put this into perspective because she had heard about the Black Sox, right? Joe Jackson, Chick Yandel, the rest. They threw the 1919 World Series and they all got banned for life. Did you? Your mic's on, right? Yeah.
No, it is now. I just wrote my senior thesis about it, is what I said. I'm here trying to get stuff ready for people while we're doing that.
Yeah. So we had talked about that, and she was like, "Yeah, I just think it's kind of weird they got suspended for life. Like, there's so much worse things you could do, because now there's players who beat their wives and beat their kids." And I'm like, "Yes, that is true." And she is studying to become a psychologist. And so I said, "Yeah, but Grace, like, you have a job with a ton of ethics, right?" And so I'm like, "What is like the worst ethical boundary you could break?" And she's like, "I don't know, killing a patient." And I'm like, "Well, yes, but we're getting away from the point. Like, just the ethical thing. Because like, if you think about it in sports, that's the worst thing you could do. Take money from gamblers to intentionally throw the biggest series of your life. Like, yeah, that's not good. It was also illegal back then too. Like you can't do that. And so like, I get banning those guys for life. The evidence thing, hit or miss on that. And so I kind of feel that way about this and the Pete Rose situation. But ultimately, I do feel bad. This is a guy who, unlike maybe some of the Black Sox guys, or didn't get the opportunity to do this, like the Black Sox guys didn't, but he's been rehabbing his image with baseball for 20 years now, 25 years, and like really has gone to serious lengths, to the point where he was doing that Fox show.
Yeah. I completely forgot that he was an analyst until you brought it up earlier.
And that's just not who he is. He wasn't great at it, but it was just this desperate attempt to show a personality and a commitment to baseball. And it's like, you see all this stuff and it's like sad, he's got people doing meetings for him with the league year after year. And he's, begging old teammates and old players in MLB who are probably more than happy to do it, but to advocate for him on his behalf. And one of which not being Johnny Bench, who has never advocated for him and has said like he broke the rules. And so it is sad in a way that here's a guy who really did care about baseball and gambling. that was it, which, can be problematic. But
I think he self-admitted himself, says that he just grew up in the wrong era, or played in the wrong era when it came to stuff like that.
Big time.
For sure.
Big time. Like that. And I don't know, maybe someday performance enhancing drugs will be as cavalier as the way we see sports gambling now. But there's part of me that's like, yep, it's sad that he won't get into the Hall of Fame because of the years of work that he did to rehab his image. And there are some bad people in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and there's some people who've done some bad things in the Hall of Fame. But then there's also that part of me that's like, you know what, you don't get everything in life.
That's true. No,
and that's kind of the way I feel about the steroid guys. I understand the arguments both ways. I personally am not arsed at all if the steroid guys don't get in.
No.
I'm
not either.
You got the millions of dollars, you got plenty of records, and if you don't get in the Hall of Fame, you don't get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. You weren't playing for the Hall of Fame then when you did it.
Right. Yeah, someone had that take that I just gave out. I can't remember who it was. I just remember I thinking that was such a good point. Like, you know what? You don't get everything.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to forget that Mark McGwire hit 70 home runs this season. You're not going to forget that Barry Bonds is the all-time home run king, or that Roger Clemens had 7 Cy Young awards. You get to keep that. You get to have all of that.
My summer of 98 will still be there as a kid.
And nobody who's an actual student of the game is going to think that Mike Piazza is a better player than Barry Bonds.
No.
Nobody's going to think that.
Mike
Or that
Piazza's a
Scott
solid
Rowland
catcher.
is better than Roger Clemens or Sammy Sosa or Alex Rodriguez. Like, no way. And that's kind of how it is. At some point, you do have to think of it as just a museum. And Pete Rose could never think of it as just a museum. And it's tough to blame him. This is a guy who was in baseball his whole life.
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of funny. Obviously, the records are incredible. But batting average was such a big deal back then. He finished with a career 303 average. Pretty solid.
That is nice.
You'd think it'd be higher with
Yeah.
as many hits as he got, but he did play a long time. He retired with the same batting average as such stars as Steve Brody, Henry Larkin, George Harper, Al Oliver, Jake Daubert. I'm sure you remember all your Jake Daubert
Cards.
days.
Yeah.
Mark Grace,
Okay.
also at 303.
Cub there.
Mike Greenwell, former MVP with the Red Sox. Harvey Keene.
Okay.
You know anything about Harvey Keene?
Not much.
He was the last out of Sandy Koufax's perfect game and also managed the 82 Brewers to the World Series.
Okay.
Harvey's Wallbangers, they were called. Harvey Keene was the manager. And not quite as good. Chipper Jones is the same, 303.
Larry. There we go.
Not quite as good as Manny Mota.
Okay.
Mel Ott, great player.
Okay. No, Mel Ott.
Rusty Greer.
Yeah, hey,
not
there's
quite
a Ranger
there.
guy for
And then you see George Brett, 305. Like one of the best pure hitters ever as well. Chick Stahl, he's not as good at that. Not as good as Jose Altuve. Still some time. Or Cupid Childs or Dixie Walker or Joe Mauer, 306.
Mauer's only 306.
Mickey Cabrera, 306. Johnny Pesky,
Joe Mauer,
307. Did he get in this year?
Yeah,
okay.
Him, Helton, Beltre.
Because I know there's a catcher's fascinating. I could talk Baseball Hall of Fame all day, all freaking day. Catcher fascinates me in terms of Hall of Fame stuff. Yeah. I watched pretty much all of Joe Mauer's career. I believe he's a Hall of Famer. I watched all of Buster Posey's career. I believe he's a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stack their numbers up against other positions,
no,
it's tough.
Yeah.
Even this Joe Mauer one. Like, I heard some good arguments against Joe Mauer.
Well, there's a lot of things.
And I just, there's part of that's eyeball test that I know players use all the time. It's why I don't want players voting for the Hall of Fame. But it's like, as someone who watched their whole career, you're like, Joe Mauer was one of the toughest outs in the whole league.
And I think for catchers, it's also weird too, because you have to look at them from a defensive standpoint sometimes, which I don't think everybody does.
Yes, and metrically it's tough.
Exactly, of like how the greats can really frame a game up and can, get you strikes here. And, like
I would say catcher in that, respect is not much different from offensive coordinator in football.
I'd agree with that.
Yes, the offensive coordinators look better when they have great quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But if you can, keep a good team ERA with good to average quarterbacks or pitchers in this sense.
Now, sometimes
that's impressive, man.
Sometimes you'll have a pitcher like Greg Maddux who wants to call the game himself to you, like he did with Eddie Perez.
Sure. Dude,
there's some really cool stories of just listening to Greg Maddux and those Braves teams talk. I don't know if and I'm not a big Braves fan, but I feel like you're like me of just stories like that in general, of like Maddux told once of how he purposely gave up an inside, like he pitched inside to Jeff Bagwell late in the season and Bagwell just crushes it. And Eddie Perez, as they're walking off, he's like, our report was like not to like throw inside to him. Why'd you do that? And he goes, because it's a long season when we're going to see them again in the playoffs and he's going to be looking inside. Yeah. And it was just like when he came around exactly. And the one game that Maddux pitched there in the DS or CS, whatever it was against Bagwell, that's exactly what Bagwell was looking for. And he struck him out 3 pitches. And it's just things like that, sorry, I kind of got off on it, but
no, I like that.
That's the things that
we're talking about catchers Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And Rose caught some games, I think.
But so it's like, it's things like that that you have to take into account when you look at players of just like the intelligence they have for the game. And catcher is one of those positions that I feel has to have a lot. You have to know what's going on around you. And you also, I feel like each pitcher is different too. So it's like a guy who can connect with an entire battery and be able to frame up a game. Like that's why Yasmani Grandal strikes out a lot. And he doesn't necessarily have a great average, but the dude can frame up a game very well. And so you take that sometimes, not saying he's an Hall of Famer, but sometimes catcher is a position where you take that trade-off because you know what you're getting defensively. Mitch Garver was a guy like that. Or not so much, but I'm saying like you trade off sometimes the bad offense for a good defensive or sound baseball-minded catcher.
By the way, Pete Rose is the answer to one of my favorite baseball trivia questions ever.
What's up?
He is and I guarantee you when we do eventually get the Bulldozer on, he will mention this. So I'm not even going to tell him that I talked about it. Pete Rose is the only player in MLB history to play 5,000 games at 5 different positions. Think about that. Not the best athlete ever.
No.
Not terrible, but just a gritty guy. In fact, he came up as a second baseman because that's what you did when a guy you hope can hit but can't really play the field. Doesn't have the power to play the corner infield, not fast enough to play center or quick enough to play short. You put him at second, doesn't have good arm strength. And he played 5,000 games at 5 different positions.
That's pretty incredible.
That's unbelievable.
Second. Did he play third?
I'll bet one of them was third.
I feel like I remember the third. 4. You said he caught a little bit, and then I'm sure he played the outfield.
I was thinking first. I don't know how much
I feel like
caught.
he played one of the corners.
I don't think he caught 5,000 games.
No.
Yeah, I'll bet he played both corner infields, both corner outfields.
That makes sense to me.
But man, it does feel weird though. Like when you look at his accolades, that he's not in the Hall of Fame. Just a weird thing. 17-time All-Star, won 3 World Series. MVP, World Series MVP, Rookie of the Year, couple Gold Gloves, 3 batting championships, all-time leader in hits, like a very significant record.
Yeah.
And one of the most significant records in all of baseball. He's got MLB records for career hits, career singles, which is a staggering amount of his hits, obviously. Games played, at-bats, plate appearances.
I know that. Like I think
That's
of
significant stuff.
Very much so. And I like to think of like the records of like, Tris Speaker with like triples and stuff like that. That's never going to be matched. But with how good pitching, like, because pitching's evolving and it's getting
career
better
hits
too.
Is never going to be matched.
No. So like, that's something that you have to take into account too, of like, that's something that is Hall of Fame worthy.
And it's just, it's never going to be matched because it's not valued as much.
That's true.
I mean, this was a guy who was a singles hitter for 25 years. That's never going to happen again. Nobody cares about that. And so, yeah, no one's going to reach 4,000 hits again. He had 4,256.
Are we going to get another 3,000? Yeah.
The 300 win thing might be dead in the water.
I think you're right there too.
But 3,000 hits, I think we will get again. Because I think baseball is teetering a little bit away from the TTO days. But it's still not, the single is not valued, which I get it. So, and he became the first player to die while still ineligible since William Cox's death in 1989. So I want to close with this. We're got a morbid segment coming up. I'm pushing it to next segment.
That's fine.
But I wonder, years and years ago, I think Joe Jackson died in 1953.
Okay.
Was there any kind of momentum from the guys who played with him and against him of enough is enough? We need to put this guy in the Hall of Fame.
That's an interesting take.
Now, obviously, it's not apples to apples because we didn't have any kind of social media or anything back then, which could actually help in this case of not being reminded what he did all the time. And Joe Jackson was still kind of in his prime, whereas Pete Rose had the career. He had the Hall of Fame career. It's right there. One of the great careers of all time. It's laid out for us completely. We don't have a what if scenario. Joe Jackson, I mean, I'll look up his numbers real quick, but like he is a guy who was absolutely going to be in the Hall of Fame. He died in 1951.
The trajectory he was having, I feel like he was a no doubter. And
he'd already played 13 seasons, career 356 average and 800 RBI already. Like no doubt that guy goes in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
356.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
He was not. And I mean, like the thing that's there that I remember is even if he like agreed to it and then changed his, like there's things with his story that are just,
there's some holes in it that's not in there with the Pete Rose story.
That's true. And so like, that's where it makes it a little weird too. So you're right. It's not apples to apples, but that is a guy that I completely agree with. That trajectory, he would have been like, we would talk about shoeless Joe Jackson. And I think some people still do, obviously, aside from that, as like one of the greats of that era.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You mentioned Tris Speaker.
Yeah.
Speaker, Jackson, Cobb, Wagner.
Central Texas, yeah.
Those guys. Yeah. Yeah. From Don't Tell Me. Don't Tell Me.
Okay.
Meridian?
No. Starts with an H.
Oh man, that's throwing me for a loop.
Hamlin? No.
Hutto?
No, but it is HU. It's Hubbard.
Hubbard. I should have gotten that. I don't know if Pete's here, but if he is, we're going to have him in next. If not, we're going to do this either way. We have a fun category. We're doing old sports talk radio. We've got the classic death pool coming up next. I thought you should have left just the camera on Pete's empty chair.
I mean, I can do that real quick. I can add him in there with you and look at that. Well, you can't, but it's just, there you go. You and Pete's empty chair.
Pete, I think he's coming. He's going to enjoy this segment.
Well,
you guys are fucked up.
I can bring it back in when he comes in. Wait, you think he's going to think we're messed up for this?
Yeah, but he's going to do it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah, for sure.
So I'll tell him you'll be on camera right away. But we talked about Pete Rose and the complicated legacy. I wonder if Pete's seen that documentary. He sees every sports.
Yeah, probably. Well, we also
Zach, you're a disappointment to me for not having seen it. But
sorry.
As I watched it the day he died and got through about half of it.
I'm used to being a disappointment.
So we talked about this morning. Zach, you mentioned that these things come in threes.
I did. I just brought up the fact that usually these come in threes. And
you're right.
Not it's not too crazy for them to also be themed in a way.
Yes. So you said who's the third? I said Chris Christopherson, who died on Sunday. You said that doesn't count.
That doesn't count because he's more of a musician or even an actor if you wanted to. You could throw him in a lot of different routes. Yeah. Or
he's he's a sailor, right? Is that what he was in that song?
I think so. I don't remember fully.
You're not a big country guy.
No, I'm not.
I was a sailor.
I remember he wrote.
I was born upon the tide.
He wrote Sunday Morning Coming Down for Johnny Cash. Yeah. That's a great
and he died
song.
On a Sunday. Can you believe that?
Ooh, I didn't put that together. Well, there's something in a Sunday that makes a man feel all alone.
Sunday Scaries.
Yeah.
Did he write that one too?
I don't know if he did or not.
Anyway,
I disagree with stuff.
All right,
sometimes.
so they come in threes, and they have to be all sportsmen at this point. Okay?
I feel like that's
so we got 2 in one day. Kevin Mutombo, Pete Rose, 2 big ones.
Yeah.
So who is the next to die in the sports world? This is classic, good old-fashioned Shock Jock Celebrity Death Pool Athlete Edition.
Yep.
You've been thinking about this.
I've been
I've
thinking
got
about
like
it.
3 or 4 I'm
Really?
ready to throw out there.
Because see, I kind of went
I
with.
might even go one by sport.
I kind of just wow.
Might even.
Okay. See, because I sit there and I thought,
But I did tell you only think of one.
You did, yeah. And I went through just a couple different things in my head, and I thought, all right, well, who's the? I don't know why I'm going to explain myself, but I feel like I need to. Who's like another fellow older like MLB player? And I was like, okay, let me look at that. And then it hit me. Well, why don't I pick a more physical sport? Because unfortunately, CTE is a real thing.
Yeah. So you're going
Um,
football.
I'm going football, and I'm purely basing this off of age. And it feels weird that if it does happen, I'm going to feel somehow related to this. But I'm going Raymond Berry.
Okay.
Just based off
Former
age alone.
Patriots coach Raymond Berry.
Age alone. He's
How
an
old is
NFL
he?
Hall of Famer. I think he's in his 91.
I'm surprised to hear he's still alive. Yeah.
91 is what I'm going
Wow.
with. I couldn't find anything, not like I looked super hard, of how his
health is.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
I haven't looked into that for any of these guys.
91,
that I'm
yeah.
thinking
Yeah, 1990
To be fair.
1991. He is 91 years old right now. Oh, he was born in Corpus. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to
I
go
think you went to high
with
school in Corpus too.
I'm going to go with Raymond Berry then.
Raymond Berry.
That's the only one I have. I didn't have one for each sport. But,
Catching passes from. He
he
was the favorite target of Pro Football Hall of Famer from Louisville.
Why am I do this all the time when you do this
Yeah,
to
I
me.
know. I know. You get nervous. I put you on the
I
spot.
do. I don't know.
Johnny Unitas.
Oh,
Unitas to Berry. That was it. 58 championship game, baby.
for the Colts.
Yep.
Yep.
Speaking of, my dad, who's supposed to be on the show, I'm not dismissing him for that, but he did get to do an interview with Johnny Unitas once.
Oh, that's cool.
He said it was an unpleasant experience.
Oh, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any? I know, and I'm going to get to your desk, but I mean, we've been blessed enough to, I would assume, talk to enough athletes. You ever,
Yeah.
or even people in the sports media world, bump into somebody and you're like, oh, well, that's not how I thought that was going to go. Okay, I feel like everybody has one. I'll share a. Granted, I thought he was going to kind of be an asshole
I'd
to
have
begin
to
with.
think about that one.
I have a Chris Berman story to share.
I met Chris Berman once. Yeah, do that real quick. I want to get to mine.
Oh shit! Never mind. Go ahead.
You
No,
sure?
no,
You can
no,
do
no.
it real quick.
No, all I was going to say is we were at the Super Bowl when we saw
Slideshow.
Maurice Pouncey for the Steelers
Okay. Yeah.
up because everybody at media day was either out on the field or a couple players were up in the stands,
Aaron
and nobody
Fred,
noticed
yeah.
them except some local Pittsburgh media. So we're sitting there standing in line, and Chris Berman showed up big times and just steps like right in front of us, just like pushing us out of the way to kind of get the interview. Like, all right, we're next. I don't know why. It's a small thing, but I was like,
no, I get that.
all right, you just got here, buddy, and you saw, oh, hey, this is what everybody's going to. We're going to commandeer that. Now go ahead with yours.
So my first thought was NFL as well.
Yeah.
By the way,
It makes sense.
and it's one of Pete's idols. It's someone who's on a poster that is normally up for Pete's show.
Oh, is it okay?
Who do you think it is?
Lawrence Taylor,
No, no.
Mark
No.
Gastineau.
No.
Okay, then.
Although Gastineau's
Oh, okay. So it's Namath.
I'm going Broadway Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Namath.
That's not. Does he still drink?
Probably. I don't think he's given up on it. And he's old. He's in his 70s? Probably almost 80.
Yeah. I'll look.
Yeah,
that
I
up
mean
then, too.
60s. He's playing in the AFL. So yeah, he's probably about 80.
You know.
Mike, you're on camera.
Well, I mean, I can put you on if you want to be.
No, don't. I don't want them to see Mike.
Okay. Well, we
Nobody
can hear
should see
Mike
me.
though.
You gonna hear me?
Yeah, we hear you right now.
So that's my ultimate pick. Now, if I did want to go to other leagues,
Now,
81.
is this the?
81.
Are we doing the death picks?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
fantastic.
the athlete debt.
Do you have an athlete one?
Fantastic.
Mike's gonna pick someone who's already dead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, think about it. Cam's got a couple more sports ones.
Yeah.
No,
so
go
the
ahead,
other-
go
the
ahead,
other
I'll
ones
think
I was
about it,
thinking were basketball.
Okay.
It was Elgin Baylor for a long time. Elgin
Oh,
Baylor's
okay.
no longer with us.
Yeah.
I saw this guy the other day. Don't be surprised if it's Kareem.
Really?
Walking with a cane. I mean,
Yeah.
he's old. He's
I get
old.
that, but
He's probably 75,
What about that Mike Leach?
77.
Is he doing okay?
77. Huh?
Mike Leach, is he doing all right?
He
I wouldn't pick him.
Oh, okay.
I
All
wouldn't pick
right.
him.
Okay. Sorry.
Hockey, my instinct goes to great Bruin Johnny Busick. I don't know if there's anyone who's like 100, but Johnny Busick is very old. He started playing for the Bruins in 1957, and they weren't even his first team. But
89.
89, 21 years with the Bruins, 2 Stanley Cups, great ambassador for the game. And baseball, I hadn't really thought about baseball that much.
Here's the
we've
thing.
lost it. We've lost
So
a lot. We've kind of lost an
have.
era there the last few years, like that Hank Aaron, Willie Mays earlier this year. So I said like stick to an era. So if that's the case, I'm gonna go with. Oh, that's tough. Johnny Bench is about 80.
Ooh.
Johnny Bench is a good one.
What about 2 Reds?
Yeah, because I was thinking Johnny Bench. I was thinking at 75, like Johnny Bench, Carl Yastrzemski, both the same age. Tony Perez still alive. Louis Tiant still alive.
Jerry West, how's he doing?
He is no longer with us.
Dang it.
You can't pick him.
I keep looking through the list.
Yeah,
What list are you looking through?
Oh, this is people that died. I'm sorry. That was
well,
the
then
wrong
that
list.
would be okay. See,
We'll go through it, see if there's someone who
Sure.
reminds you of someone else.
Sure. Is this just athletes we're picking?
Yes,
Well, yeah,
yes,
because here's-
Zach said Chris Christopherson does not count.
He doesn't
in the
count as an
celebrity death of
athlete.
3.
Okay.
that's my thought, and I mean,
Because I'm going to pick Dick Van Dyke if we're not talking.
well,
now.
yeah, but
Well,
no,
that's too easy.
No, we
Van
don't.
Dyke.
Yeah,
No,
we don't-
you'd pick Jimmy Carter.
I'm also going to pick Alan Greenspan.
Is Alan Greenspan not doing
I
too
didn't
well?
know he was still alive.
He's 98.
So I just
Noam
feel
Chomsky. We pick Noam Chomsky.
no. I just feel like they have like they're related usually. Like the fact that it's 2 sports greats back to back, and like kind of Christopherson falls in with like the Earl Jones or
The
James
Earl
Earl Jones.
Well, he was a
and Maggie
lineman for the
Smith.
county. I mean, that's a tough job.
No, he wasn't. Glenn Campbell was.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, dude. I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
You don't mess up Glenn Campbell in front of me.
Oh, yeah. I'll
That-
mess up
that
Glenn
doesn't
Campbell
happen.
right in front
That
of you.
doesn't happen, brother. So I don't know if I have a good, like a real solid one for baseball the way I feel about the others.
There are a lot of old baseball
Actually,
players, but
This might be crazy. I might be off by like 20, 30 years
they're
here.
not on the same level as like Pete Rose or Dick Van Dyke.
Is Bob Pettit still alive?
Ooh,
Bob Pettit.
instead of Elgin Baylor?
For some reason, I think he might still be alive. I have nothing to base that off of. and I
He
can-
is 91 years old.
Bob Pettit is still
91.
alive.
He
All
was
right,
a,
that's 14
he was
years
a
older
St.
than
Louis
Kareem.
Hawk.
Yes. I can I change mine to Bob Pettit for the NBA? It's got to be
Sure.
Bob Pettit.
I mean, granted, all I have is Raymond Berry 2 or 4, but yeah, we're gonna watch these though, right? To like,
Sure, yeah.
do
I'm
we
trying
need
to think of like the oldest living Red Sox, and it's probably like somewhere around Yastrzemski, Lomborg. Nobody that played in the
as
50s.
of I'm trying to see.
Can I get
As
a
of-
name in?
Yes.
Charlie Maxwell. by the
Oscar
way.
Robertson?
I don't know who that is. That's a good pick.
Yeah.
That's a good pick by Mike.
Oscar Robinson, also Earl Campbell. I think you're coming up on Earl Campbell. It may not
Earl
be
Campbell,
may not be
unfortunate-
super
all
old.
unfortunate, but not a bad pick.
may not be super old, but he is in rough shape.
Yeah, he really struggles to get around.
Well, all he does is eat
Yeah.
those hot links, and that's
Yeah,
not
with
good
his
on a
barbecue
body.
sauce
Yeah.
and-
That's another Super Bowl.
But
He's
like
only
when they bring him
69.
out, for like UT games, it's like
Mm-hmm.
really sad. Like he can barely
Yeah.
walk. I don't even know if he walks at all now.
Well, Matthew McConaughey carries him out.
yeah, is that right?
usually,
Like
yeah.
on his back, like
Yeah.
crab walks him.
Yeah, it's rough.
Um,
It's hard to watch.
My God, dude. Talk about someone. I'll bring up my dad again, who idolized Earl Campbell.
Dude.
That is someone I would go back in time to go and to be able to watch.
Yeah.
So it's-
My God,
yeah,
what
no,
a what
he
a
was- he
what
was
a
amazing.
specimen.
He
of
was
a human.
amazing.
I got to help him across a Super Bowl media room floor. That's the thing. Talking about how bad a shape he was. Even this is like 2011,
Wow.
and he needed help
Yeah.
to like just walk. Whatever. It's one
That's
of my
awesome,
biggest
man.
moments.
That's cool.
I lost out on Griffey.
Yeah,
Griffey
we've
Jr.
been over
So
that
I at
story.
least got Earl Campbell. And yeah, like I remember it, but he was just like, he didn't want to take the chair over. Like he wanted to walk over to like the interview and stuff we were doing. And so he sat there and like put an arm around my shoulder and I helped him walk over there. And there's something very surreal about that moment of like, oh, this is the guy that my dad would tell me as a kid on and on about how great he was. And whenever there were clips of play
Like
of just how
mythical
dominant.
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I got to do that. So no, I get that. Like Earl Campbell was an absolute, just amazing force of an athlete, but dude took a lot of punishment. And you can just see it.
Yes, he took a lot of punishment in a time when you were still allowed to take a lot of punishment and not have all of the padding and all the stuff that we know about CTE and all of
Yeah.
that at this point.
I saw we got to see a lineman, a Steelers lineman, play with one of the
The
skull
What?
caps.
Big fat helmets.
Yeah.
Oh, did we? Yeah,
Yeah,
one
there
of
was
the
a guy.
Patriots had Jabril Peppers uses it.
Yeah, I
Guardian
mean,
cat.
I'm all for it. Whatever you got to do to.
Yeah, but
kinda-
what is it though? Is it just extra padding?
I
Yeah.
think it is just extra
Oh,
padding.
okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm obviously not the scientist. So
I'm
I
just
won't say
happy that they
anything. It
put
just
the
feels
logo
weird
on
when
it,
they're.
so it doesn't
It's
look
like-
as bad.
It's like watching one of those little kids ride their bike, but maybe not in the best part of town.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but
You can
Yeah, I don't know.
You can choose what part of town your kid rides their bike, Mike.
well,
Yeah.
not everybody can.
Okay, fair enough. That's
I mean,
guess
sometimes you can't pick where you live.
that's true.
You know, it's the lottery of birth kind of thing. I'm
I'm
looking
trying to find the comparisons of Fred McGriff to Scott Rowland.
the
Oh,
and
for the
it's-
Hall of Fame.
the one that takes a
And
bite
it's
out
just
of
giving
crime.
me all pictures.
Oh,
Yes.
the crime dog, baby.
And I don't want that.
I ever told you my story about how I used to work on McGruff, the crime dog, the giant robot?
I thought it was somebody in a suit.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead,
it was
Mike.
it was a
Go
big robot.
ahead.
It had a cassette player in the back of it, and you would hit the cassette player, and it would go, "Who let the dogs?" and it would just go around in circles, and then it had a little speaker in it, and so a cop could stand behind it and pretend to be McGruff. Kids, don't do drugs and don't crawl in your neighbor's window. Things like that. I was teaching robotics at the time, and so it was a lesson for my kids to work on this big robot.
Fred McGriff should be in the Hall of Fame.
But I think
over
he's
Scott
dead.
Rowland.
Is he not?
No, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, it's a big deal.
That is, yeah, no, he deserves.
It's
to
a
be
big
in
deal
over
that
Rowland.
he's not in. 493 homers. I'm sorry, dude.
Wait, who is this?
Yeah,
Fred
Fred
McGriff.
McGriff.
Fred McGriff.
I
yeah.
don't. I'm kind of freeballing this here, but I would bet that his career numbers would be very similar, and his career would be very similar to Bagwell,
Hmm.
who to me Bagwell is a slam dunk Hall of
Bagwell
Famer.
had
He's
over
in the Hall of
500
Fame.
though, right?
No, he had 449.
He had 449. Okay. Oh,
I mean, Bagwell was a better player than Biggio, like for sure. And I just think if you go and look at their peaks and look at their careers, they're probably pretty similar. I can't get this comparison thing to work, so I wish I could do that right now in the dying moments of this show, but I can't.
The
for some
dying
reason.
moments.
yeah,
Yes.
We got like a minute.
How
We got like a
no,
minute,
I thought
Mike.
maybe this was the dying moment.
Fred.
Is what this was called.
That spoiler alert, our twist ending.
I'm gonna pick. I didn't pick a
This show
baseball
was the-
player.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
Thank
pick
you.
Ted Kaczynski.
Oh, this time I got that. He's still alive.
Huh?
He's still alive.
That's one. Yeah.
Wow, good for him.
I'm gonna
What
pick.
state?
I'm gonna go for a parlay though.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick him and the Unabomber.
Wait,
Right. I think one of them's already dead. So I'm just waiting on this other. one.
isn't Ted Kaczynski the Unabomber?
Yes, but Ted Kaczynski was also a baseball player.
Look at this guy. This guy.
But the Unabomber's dead already.
That's what I'm saying. Half of my parlay is already gone.
Oh, so you're going?
I'm waiting for the second half.
Team
Gotcha.
Ted
The second
Kaczynski.
Yeah.
shoe to drop.
This is a long.
Okay.
This is a long play, Zach. This
Do
is
you remember that scene in Good Will Hunting where they're talking about the Unabomber?
apples.
Do you remember that scene, Zach?
yeah.
No,
Where-
I don't remember that scene.
It's actually a really good scene. So they're in. So Robin Williams is with the dickhead friend Skarsgård or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're at like his Southie bar
Uh-huh.
with his bartender.
Watch it with that.
Yeah, it gets me into trouble.
Wait, is that
Um,
Cam? No, sorry.
and
Is he
and-
doing a bit?
And so they're talking about Will Hunting,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
good Will
Mhm.
Hunting.
Oh, good. Will
And
Hunting.
how this kid is so special. He's going to be this brilliant mathematician, but he doesn't want to do it, right? And so Robin Williams is kind of in Will's corner here. And he's basically saying, like, who the fuck cares about a famous mathematician?
sure.
Who gives a shit? And so he says, here's this guy. He, was a huge math prodigy. He was a teacher at the University of Michigan at age 22. He wins all these, awards for how great a mathematician he is.
Mhm.
His name's Ted Kaczynski. You ever heard of him? And he's like, no. And he yells to the bartender. He goes, hey, Sully, who's Ted Kaczynski?
Hey, Sully.
And he goes, Unabomber. And they just go on with their day.
Yeah.
And it's like a kind of a poignant scene. But that movie is from 1997.
Yeah.
You're telling me a professor at MIT didn't know the name of the Unabomber?
Yeah.
That was a big
Well,
deal, like what, 2 years earlier?
It's according to I can believe that just based on having worked in education. They're not the
Will you
smartest.
Shut out.
They're
I mean,
not the smartest
professor
people.
at MIT, Mike. You went to
Whatever.
University High.
MIT's got to
Yeah.
have a
He
moron
probably had tenure,
also.
too.
I mean, it's an equal hire
Oh,
kind of
this-
thing.
Oh,
if
just
you're
in time
hiring,
for us
if you're
to-
hiring
Dude.
smart guys, you got to hire bad
This
guys too.
douche.
Hey, by the way, Sandy Koufax.
Yeah, but he looks great.
He does.
He
Well,
looks
yeah,
great.
he'll make a
But
great,
yeah, he's old.
he'll make a great corpse.
he's
I mean,
pushing-
but
No, that's why I
jeez.
went Raymond Berry.
I mean,
he's
he's got to
91.
be. He's got to be almost 90. Sandy
Koufax? Yeah,
like
here.
86 probably.
Sandy Koufax is 117 years old.
88 years old.
Who?
They showed him at the World Series. Now
Koufax?
this was
Yeah,
6 years
Koufax
ago.
is 88.
He was at the World Series when the Red Sox were there, and
188.
he looked awesome. He would have been 82. Anyway, that's going to do it. We're over time. And once Pete gets here, that's how I know it's over. This is the Cam Show. This was the Cam Show. Zach Burke, Mike Hamilton, no one else. Cam Stewart bringing it to you. We'll be live tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time on YouTube. We'll see you then.
Ron.